My sister spent 20 years stealing everything I loved while my parents cheered her on, so I stole back the one thing she thought was already hers. She made sure I knew I was second best, not in the typical sibling rivalry way, but in the calculated, cruel way. Like when we were both in the school play at 11 and she cut holes in my costume an hour before showtime. I walked on stage in a shredded dress while the audience gasped, and my parents just said I should have been more careful. They watched her scenes with rapt attention, but when my turn came, I saw them gathering their coats and slipping toward the exit. The only ones who remained were my grandparents, steadying their ancient camcorder to capture every moment my parents wouldn't stay to see. By high school, her game had evolved. Marcus, the guy I'd been crushing on since freshman orientation, suddenly became interesting to her 3 days after we started dating. 2 weeks later, I caught them making out in his car. When I confronted her, she said she couldn't help it if guys preferred her. Our parents told me I was being dramatic. Senior year, I landed an internship at the Chicago Tribune, the only high school spot they offered. When I told my family at dinner, my sister immediately started crying about how I knew she wanted to work there. She'd never mentioned journalism once. The next morning, she called my editor claiming I'd plagiarized my submission samples. They revoked my offer. My mom's response? You should have let her apply too. The pattern never changed. Anything that mattered to me, she had to take. My friends became her friends. My interests became her obsessions. My achievements became competitions she had to win. And my parents enabled it every time because she was prettier, more charming, and could cry on command. When I got engaged to David 5 months ago, I thought distance had finally fixed things. We'd been low contact for years, and she seemed genuinely happy at the announcement dinner. She even hugged me and said David was lucky. First red flag I missed. My sister never compliments me without an agenda. 8 weeks later, she got engaged to her boyfriend of 3 months. At our cousin's baby shower, she pulled me aside with that fake smile that always meant trouble. She wanted me to be the first to know she'd booked the Whitmore estate for next September. The Whitmore estate where our grandparents got married in 1952, where I'd played pretend weddings since I was 5, where grandma told me she'd dance at my wedding someday, the exact venue I'd shown her pictures of last month. I told her that was my venue, that she knew I'd been planning to get married there since childhood. She tilted her head and said I hadn't booked it yet, so first come, first served. Then she added that grandma was dead now anyway, so it wasn't like she'd know. That's when I knew this wasn't about rivalry. She wanted to hurt me. I didn't scream or make a scene. I simply smiled and agreed that yes, it was first come, first served. Then I went home and spent 3 days researching the Whitmore Estate's booking system. They were completely booked for 18 months except for one date. One perfect Saturday exactly 4 weeks before my sister's wedding. I booked it immediately. The explosion was nuclear. She called screaming about how I was stealing her thunder, how no one would care about her wedding after mine. Our parents drove 2 hours to ambush me at my apartment, offering to pay for my entire wedding if I'd change venues. $30,000 to move my wedding so my sister wouldn't be inconvenienced. Funny how they'd never offered to pay for my wedding before. I told them if they couldn't support me for once in my life, they weren't welcome at my wedding. Then I blocked them all. My grandfather walked me down the aisle alone, and I wore grandma's pearl necklace that she'd left specifically for my wedding day. The Whitmore estate had never seen a more beautiful ceremony. My sister changed venues and from what I heard, ended up at some generic country club. That was 2 weeks ago. I thought I'd won. I thought it was finally over. Then yesterday my phone rang. It was my sister full on sobbing. Not the fake tears she'd perfected for our parents, but raw, broken crying. Her fiancé had left. She was pregnant and alone and had nobody else to call. So against every instinct, I agreed to meet her. She was already at the cafe when I arrived, hunched over a table covered in papers. Her perfect makeup was streaked. She looked destroyed. She slid the papers toward me without a word. Legal documents about custody and guardianship. My name was already filled in. When I asked what the hell this was, she said she needed me to take the baby when it was born. She couldn't do this alone. I was the only family she had left. The words sounded so foreign coming from her mouth. I asked why the hell she thought I'd raise her baby after everything she'd done to me. She looked up then, meeting my eyes for the first time. Her voice went completely flat. Because it's David's. Everything stopped. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the cruel joke, but she just stared back, one hand pressed against her stomach. 3 months ago, she said. That weekend you went to Denver. 3 months ago, she said. That weekend you went to Denver. I told him you were probably cheating. He needed comfort, and I've always been better at that than you. I stared at the custody papers, my wedding ring catching the afternoon light streaming through the cafe window. The world tilted sideways. My sister shifted nervously in her chair, one hand protectively covering her stomach while the other drummed against the table. She knew she'd just detonated a bomb in my life. My voice came out quiet, controlled. Get up and leave right now. Her hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with surprising force. You need to hear everything about that weekend. I noticed bruise-like marks on her wrist, the kind that looked self-inflicted. The manipulation was already starting. I jerked away hard, knocking over my coffee in the process. The dark liquid spread across the table, seeping into the custody papers, mirroring how my life was unraveling in real time. My sister quickly grabbed her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I caught a glimpse of her message before she tilted it away. She knows. The screen went dark, but that image burned into my mind. She'd planned this. This wasn't some desperate confession from a broken woman. This was calculated. The elderly cafe owner, Mrs. Chen, who'd known our family for years, hurried over with towels. As she mopped up the spill, she leaned close and whispered, "Your David was here yesterday, crying. Thought you should know." My sister's face hardened at the mention of his name. The mask was slipping already. I had 2 choices: storm out and let her spin whatever narrative she wanted, or stay and get answers. Every instinct screamed to run, but I'd learned that running from my sister only gave her more ammunition. I sat back down. Start talking. Every detail. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the table. David's name flashed repeatedly on the screen. She ignored it, launching into what sounded like a practice speech about loneliness and mistakes and how things just happened. I cut her off. The truth, or I walk. The facade cracked completely. Her voice turned venomous, the real her finally showing through. Fine. I've been fucking him since your engagement party. Happy now? The engagement party. 5 months of lies. 5 months of David coming home to me after being with her. My stomach churned, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned long ago never to show her how much she could hurt me. I watched her frantically swiping through her phone, deleting photos with quick practiced movements, but I caught one before it vanished. David in her bed, the same quilt I'd helped her pick out last year visible in the frame. What else are you hiding? She clutched the phone tighter, but I was done being passive. I lunged across the table, grabbing for it. We struggled briefly, her nails digging into my hand, before Mrs. Chen intervened. Ladies, not in my cafe. My sister pulled back, phone held triumphantly against her chest. But in the struggle, I'd managed to grab something else. Her keychain had fallen during our tussle. I palmed it quietly, noting the apartment key among the collection. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Text after text from mutual friends, all variations of the same theme. Is it true about David? Your sister says you abandoned him. She told us about Denver. She'd already started spinning her web. While I sat here reeling, she'd been executing a plan. My best friend Megan called. I stepped outside to answer, keeping my sister in sight through the window. Your sister just told everyone you abandoned David for someone in Denver. What's really happening? Trust crumbled in real time. Every relationship I had was being poisoned while I stood on a sidewalk trying to process that my husband had fathered my sister's baby. Megan, it's not true. I'll explain everything, but not now. Back inside, I screenshot the she knows text before my sister could delete it from her phone's history. Evidence. I needed evidence. The timestamp showed something that made my blood run cold. She'd been texting during our grandmother's funeral last month. While I'd been crying over the woman who'd loved me when no one else did, she'd been planning this moment. My phone buzzed. David's mother. We need to talk about the baby. This family doesn't abandon blood. Even David's family was turning against me. The narrative was already set. I was the villain who'd abandoned her husband, forcing him into my sister's arms. I drove home in a daze, finding David already there, throwing clothes into a suitcase. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She said you were with someone in Denver, he mumbled. The hotel confirmed you changed rooms. The conference in Denver. I'd switched rooms because mine faced a construction site. A grain of truth twisted into her lie. Classic sister behavior. David, look at me. He kept packing. I grabbed his phone from the counter, scrolling through his messages before he could stop me. The thread with my sister went back months. Always innocent on the surface. Just checking you're okay. She seems distant lately. You deserve someone who appreciates you. The messages increased dramatically after our engagement announcement. She'd been planting seeds of doubt, watering them carefully, waiting for the right moment to harvest. My phone buzzed again. A notification that I'd been added to a Facebook group, supporting David through betrayal. My sister had already added 43 mutual friends. The information warfare was in full swing. At work the next morning, the atmosphere was thick with gossip. My boss pulled me aside. Family troubles? He asked pointedly. Your sister had lunch with me last week. She seemed concerned about your stability. My professional reputation was under attack now too. She'd been laying groundwork everywhere. I made an appointment with my therapist, only to be told she couldn't see me. Your sister was my patient first, Dr. Martinez explained over the phone. It wouldn't be ethical to take sides. Another door closed, another support system compromised. I noticed the pattern now. My sister had started therapy right after our engagement announcement. Planning. Always planning. That evening, I used the stolen key to enter my sister's apartment while she was at a prenatal appointment. Risky, but necessary. Somewhere in this carefully curated space was proof of her lies. Her bedroom revealed the first piece of evidence. Fertility tracking apps on her tablet, dating back 6 months. Before the affair supposedly started, before Denver. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. David had been targeted. My phone lit up with a text from my cousin. Your sister's story doesn't add up. She knew exactly which weekend you'd be in Denver. Remember? She asked about your trip dates at mom's birthday dinner. Small cracks in her narrative. I screenshot everything, building my own evidence file. Cross-referencing her social media with the fertility app data revealed something chilling. She'd orchestrated her interactions with David during specific windows. Every random encounter when I was teaching evening classes, every accidental meeting at the gym, calculated predation disguised as coincidence. Jake, David's best friend, called while I was still in her apartment. Something's off, he said. She showed up at our poker game that weekend you were gone, in lingerie. Said she was locked out. When? The Saturday you were in Denver. But here's the thing. I saw her use her keys to check her mail right before she came up. She wasn't locked out. Another piece clicked into place. I asked Jake to back my version of events. I took photos that night, he admitted. Thought it was weird she showed up like that. She was wearing this planned outfit, not pajamas like someone actually locked out would wear. My sister must have realized Jake had turned against her. Within hours, his girlfriend was receiving messages about his drinking problem and wandering eyes. But Jake held firm despite the strain on his relationship. He sent me the photos, my sister in carefully chosen lingerie, not the actions of someone accidentally locked out. Megan finally confronted my sister directly. She called me afterward, voice shaking. I asked her why she had David's location shared on her phone before you guys were even engaged. She tried to play it off, but her mask slipped. There was something cruel in her eyes when she realized I was questioning her story. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of weakness. This was a systematic campaign to destroy my marriage and steal my life, just like she'd always done. But this time, she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated how much I'd learned from 20 years of her games. I sat in my car outside her apartment building, organizing the evidence I'd collected. Screenshots, photos, timestamps, witness statements. For the first time since she'd dropped her bomb in that cafe, I felt something other than shock and pain. I felt ready to fight back. My sister posted ultrasound photos on social media that night with a caption that made my blood boil. She tagged me in the post about how some aunts were meant to be mommies instead. Comments flooded in praising her generosity and selflessness. The timestamp on the ultrasound proved conception happened during my Denver weekend. She'd documented her own timeline of deceit. I recognized this pattern from childhood. After destroying something I loved, she'd always position herself as the victim needing comfort. This time, I documented every post, every comment, every manipulation attempt. My phone became my weapon of truth. Eleanor, my grandmother's best friend, called unexpectedly the next morning. The 82-year-old woman's voice trembled with anger as she revealed seeing my sister at the pharmacy buying ovulation tests months ago. My sister had claimed they were for me, that I was struggling to conceive. Eleanor had kept quiet then, but not anymore. When my sister tried calling Eleanor to spin her narrative, the elderly woman shut her down completely. Eleanor had watched my sister torment me for 20 years and declared she was done enabling it through silence. She'd kept photos from family events over the decades showing the pattern of abuse. Another unexpected ally emerged from the shadows of family complicity. I started keeping a detailed timeline in a physical journal, writing in cursive that my sister had never bothered to learn. Electronic evidence could be hacked or deleted, but analog documentation felt safer. Each entry meticulously recorded dates, times, witnesses, and evidence. The journal grew thick with proof of her calculated destruction. The police dismissed my harassment complaint when I tried filing one. Family disputes weren't their jurisdiction unless physical violence occurred. The system failed exactly as I'd expected, but I needed the paper trail showing I'd tried official channels. Another document for my growing file. David's sister Sarah reached out unexpectedly, revealing my sister had tried seducing her husband too. Sarah believed my version of events because she'd experienced the predatory behavior firsthand. She'd saved suggestive texts my sister had sent, thinking they might be needed someday. Our alliance formed through shared trauma. Checking our credit card statements revealed David's purchases at my sister's favorite restaurant every Tuesday while I taught evening classes. The receipts went back months, showing a pattern of deception I'd been blind to. Each charge felt like another knife wound, but also another piece of evidence. My sister's ex-boyfriend from college contacted me through Facebook. He'd seen the drama unfolding and felt compelled to share his story. She'd faked a pregnancy to steal him from his fiancée years ago. Hospital records had eventually proved she'd lied, but not before destroying his relationship. He still had the documentation. Instead of publicly blasting my sister, I responded to concerned friends individually with facts. Screenshots, timelines, witness statements. I let evidence speak rather than emotion. My measured approach contrasted sharply with her increasingly hysterical posts. Friends began noticing the difference. My sister's lease was ending in 2 weeks, and she needed somewhere to live for the baby. Our parents pressured me to take her in, suggesting I owed her support during this difficult time. The irony of their sudden interest and family obligation wasn't lost on me. The clock was ticking on her next move. Jake's girlfriend discovered something shocking while reviewing their nanny cam footage from poker night. The video clearly showed my sister attempting to seduce multiple men that evening, not just David. She'd been hunting for a target, and David had simply been the one who fell for it. The predatory behavior was undeniable on camera. During a family dinner at our parents' house, I watched my sister's hands shake as she poured wine. Our parents didn't notice, too focused on her sob story, but I saw the cracks in her performance. When Mom mentioned something about avoiding alcohol during pregnancy, my sister quickly put the glass down, but not before taking a sip. The next morning, my sister called offering to disappear from our lives if I gave her $50,000. She needed money for a fresh start somewhere else, she claimed. I recorded the entire conversation on my hidden phone, recognizing extortion when I heard it. Her desperation was showing. Our parents finally began noticing inconsistencies in her story. During a sushi dinner, they watched her devour raw fish while claiming morning sickness moments before. Dad's comment about mercury being dangerous for babies made her pause mid-bite. The doubt seeds I'd carefully planted were beginning to sprout. I discovered her pregnancy photos were stolen from an Australian fertility blogger through reverse image search. She'd been posting someone else's ultrasounds and baby bump pictures as her own. The evidence was irrefutable. The original posts were dated 2 years earlier. Her web of lies had a massive hole. My sister's control was shrinking to just our parents and 3 manipulated friends who refused to see evidence. Everyone else had started questioning her narrative. Her kingdom of enablers was crumbling as truth spread through our social circle. She responded with increasingly frantic attempts to maintain control. I found David's journal while cleaning out our storage unit. His entries detailed my sister's escalating manipulation and his crushing guilt. One entry made my hands shake. He suspected she'd drugged him the night they first slept together. He couldn't remember getting to her apartment or consenting to anything. The implications were horrifying. Megan chose to stand by me despite my sister threatening to reveal Megan's husband's affair to everyone. Megan decided she'd rather face truth than live under my sister's thumb. Her marriage actually grew stronger through the honesty that followed. Our friendship deepened through the crisis, with late-night strategy sessions replacing our casual wine nights. Despite my rage, I refused to fabricate evidence or lie about anything. Truth was weapon enough against someone who'd built their life on deception. My sister's frantic lies contrasted starkly with my steady presentation of facts. Even neutral observers could see the difference in our approaches. I encountered my sister at the grocery store, where she created a scene when I wouldn't speak to her. She screamed about my cruelty while I calmly continued shopping. Other customers stared as she claimed victimhood, throwing items from my cart while security approached. I maintained my composure throughout her meltdown. The store manager provided me with security footage of the incident from multiple angles. My sister's public breakdown was captured in high definition, throwing groceries, screaming accusations, claiming I'd abandoned her in her time of need. The video evidence of her instability was invaluable for my documentation. David's family group chat fractured over the situation. His mother still supported my sister, but his siblings began questioning the narrative. Sarah pointedly asked about prenatal care records and doctor visits during a family discussion. The lack of medical documentation became increasingly obvious to everyone, except those determined to stay blind. 3 different friends independently reached the same conclusion about my sister's timeline. They formed a group text without her, comparing notes about the mathematical impossibility of her conception story. The dates simply didn't add up, and multiple people were now doing the math. Eleanor mobilized her retirement community like a geriatric army. 6 women who'd known our family for decades decades, decided they were done watching me suffer in silence. They began sharing their own observations from over the years, creating a devastating pattern of witnessed abuse that spanned my entire life. I finally confronted David directly at his hotel, demanding he look me in the eyes and tell me she hadn't drugged him. He broke down completely, sobbing that he couldn't remember getting to her apartment that night. His admission confirmed my worst suspicions about the depth of her predatory behavior. Friends who'd initially believed my sister began reaching out privately to apologize. They admitted they should have seen the pattern earlier. Each apology came with offers of concrete help: lawyers' numbers, spare bedrooms if I needed space, shoulders to cry on. My support network was rebuilding stronger than before. My sister's options were narrowing rapidly. The fake pregnancy became harder to maintain as people demanded medical proof. Her allies questioned increasingly obvious inconsistencies. Our parents wavered in their blind support. Her desperation manifested in manic social media posts and middle-of-the-night phone calls to anyone who'd listen. The ex-boyfriend from college provided hospital documentation, proving my sister's previous fake pregnancy had followed an identical pattern. Medical records showed she'd never been pregnant despite months of claims. He'd kept everything, knowing someday someone else would need this proof. One prior victim was confirmed with evidence. I ensured David got STD testing and started therapy without publicly shaming him. He was a victim too, regardless of his weakness in falling for her manipulation. The test results revealed my sister had been with multiple partners, adding another layer to her deception. David faced his own reckoning with choices and consequences. Sarah organized a family intervention without our parents, gathering 8 relatives to confront my sister with timeline evidence. The united front of family members she couldn't manipulate individually was powerful. They presented facts calmly but firmly, refusing to accept her emotional deflections. My sister tried claiming I'd photoshopped all the evidence against her. Our tech-savvy cousin proved the images were authentic using metadata analysis. Her manipulation attempts were failing rapidly as family members with actual expertise countered each false claim. Technology became her enemy instead of her tool. Our parents finally witnessed my sister drinking wine at a restaurant while claiming pregnancy symptoms. Mom's face crumbled as the truth hit her. Dad noticed my sister's completely flat stomach despite being supposedly months pregnant. Their worldview shattered in real time as decades of enabling confronted reality. Work colleagues rallied around me after my sister's lies were exposed through her own contradictions. My boss apologized for doubting my stability and offered flexibility while I dealt with a family crisis. My professional reputation recovered as quickly as it had been attacked once truth emerged. The pharmacy confirmed my sister had never filled any prenatal prescriptions despite multiple visits over months. The pharmacist provided a written statement about her purchasing ovulation tests but never prenatal vitamins. Another piece of medical evidence proved the pregnancy was fabricated from the start. My sister's lease expired the next day, and our parents refused to co-sign a new apartment after discovering her lies. She had less than 24 hours to find housing, and her desperation was visible in increasingly manic social media posts. The walls were closing in on her carefully constructed false reality. During a confrontation at our parents' house, my sister's real personality emerged fully. The narcissistic rage replaced her victim act as she realized her manipulations were failing. The mask she'd worn for decades finally slipped completely, revealing the cruel person underneath who'd tormented me since childhood. The stakes crystallized in that moment. My sister would destroy anyone to avoid accountability for her actions. This pattern would continue forever unless it ended now. I'd spent my life being her victim, but that chapter was closing whether she accepted it or not. I handled her extinction burst calmly, documenting every threat while protecting others from her rage. My therapy work over the years showed in how I responded to her escalating behavior. Growth through fire had prepared me for this moment of standing firm against my lifelong abuser. One by one, her remaining supporters viewed the security footage and timeline evidence I'd compiled. Truth prevailed through simple persistence and documentation. Even those most resistant to believing she could be so cruel eventually faced the overwhelming evidence of her decades-long pattern. Critical mass was reached when 20 people independently verified my version of events. My sister's narrative collapsed as collective awakening occurred across our social circle. The same people who'd enabled her for years finally saw through the manipulation and chose truth over comfortable lies. My sister agreed to admit the fake pregnancy if I didn't pursue charges for David's assault. The victory tasted bitter in my mouth. Relief was premature, though. I could see her planning something behind her desperate agreement. She'd never given up without a final manipulation attempt. At midnight, she posted a miscarriage announcement on social media, one final attempt to regain sympathy and control the narrative. The predictable playbook was obvious to everyone who'd watched her patterns emerge. She couldn't resist one last grab for victim status, even while admitting the pregnancy was fake. The community saw through it immediately. Comments poured in questioning the convenient timing and asking for hospital records. People who'd believed her initially now recognized the manipulation pattern. The immunity to her tactics had spread through our social network like antibodies against a virus. Her landlord evicted her for lease violations documented by multiple neighbors over months. The natural consequences of her behavior were arriving from all directions. The eviction notice specifically cited harassment of other tenants, a pattern she couldn't contain to just family anymore. My marriage was over, but my friendships had grown stronger than ever through this trial.